Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Admit Weekend. Our session today is going to include a Q&A period. To submit your questions, please use the Slido inquiry box on the right side of your screen. Your session has moderators that will assist you in queuing up the questions. If you have a follow-up during the Q&A, please submit those via Slido as well. And should you experience any technical difficulties during the session, please let us know by sending an email to admit@stanford.edu. So welcome to our session about financial aid. We're so excited to see you here. My colleague Ashley Lippert and I are excited to have this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Karen Cooper, and I am Stanford's Director of Financial Aid. We're going to go through these slides to explain a bit about Stanford's financial aid program and answer common questions about how all of this comes together in future years and with the help of the billing and payment process. We plan to leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of the session. So sit back for a minute and enjoy as we go through these beginning pieces. So the Financial Aid Office, I just would like to start with a brief introduction to our staff. This is where students go to ask questions about financial aid and where staff make decisions about awards. We also help you to manage outside awards, which we'll talk about more in this session, and the Federal Work Study Program, which gives eligible students just a slight advantage in finding employment on campus. So where are you in the financial aid application process right now? Hopefully, you have completed your financial aid application, which consists of 3 pieces: the CSS profile, tax forms submitted through the IDOC or Institutional Documentation Service that you get invited to after you submit the profile, and the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. We delivered your original offer of financial aid through your admission portal. All subsequent updates and letters in future years will be made available in Access. Yes, that's Access with an X, as in Axe. It will all make sense to you soon. We will be mentioning Access, which is found at access.stanford.edu, quite a bit today. That is your student portal where lots of university business is conducted. If you're listening today and think that maybe I should have applied for financial aid after all, that's understandable. It's not too late for most of you to apply for financial aid. You may still apply unless you were admitted as an international student without eligibility for aid. It's just too late for us to let you know by May 1st about your eligibility for aid. Please rest assured that we continue to evaluate applications and make adjustments throughout the academic year. As a matter of fact, at this time, we know that we still have about 40 revision requests in our queue from students who've received their first award letter. We're working as quickly as we can to address your issues before May 1. As this week goes on, we may not be able to respond to new requests before Friday. Please be assured that we continue to look at requests for revision throughout the year. Accepting the offer of admission does not lock you in to a financial aid package. Stanford's financial aid program is need-based, meaning that we are committed to providing funds to cover whatever educational costs you and your family cannot be reasonably expected to pay. This formula determines how we make our decisions. It explains why we turn conversations about "I need more aid" into conversations about "why is your parent contribution too high for your family? What's going on in your family situation that would allow us to offer more aid?" So this formula is important to us in the financial aid office, but I want you to think about another formula. Cost of attendance minus scholarships and grants equals your net cost. This formula is how you should compare financial aid offers from school to school, and happens to be how our award letter is arranged. At the top, you'll find details of your individual cost of attendance, a listing of all the scholarships and grants we're expecting for you, and the resulting net cost. The bottom half of the page shows the calculated parent and student contributions that we use to calculate your eligibility, as well as any loans that you've been offered. You can think of these items as our suggestions for managing that net cost. Now let's talk about each one of these components. This cost of attendance serves to define the maximum amount of aid that can be offered. You'll never see a bill for this amount because it includes both direct costs, those that the university will bill you for, and those that we recognize you will need to have in order to be a fully participating member of the Stanford community. Financial aid considers both kinds of expenses, both those direct and indirect costs. It's possible that these expenses might change. If, for example, you're billed a different amount for tuition because you need to enroll part-time and get permission to do so from Stanford, your aid will be adjusted to reflect that lower cost of attendance. One detail that I'd like to point out, the student fees allowance that's there on this page for $1,995 next year includes a mix of mandatory fees for which you will be automatically billed, things like house dues and a technology fee, as well as allowances for things like course-specific fees that you may see for some lab or engineering courses, for example. If your actual expenses turn out to be significantly higher, if all you take is lab courses, then you can request more assistance from the financial aid office. But this amount covers the standard amount that most students see. So we've already taken those expenses into account up front. The next section on the award letter will list the scholarships and grants that either are being offered by Stanford, by the federal or state government, or other outside resources. We consider all of these resources to be meeting your need. Net cost is what will need to be paid toward the cost of attendance, not toward the bill, but toward the entire cost of attendance after scholarships and grants are applied. In this example, even though we've offered $57,000 of scholarship, there are still $22,279 worth of expenses that the student and family still need to figure out. But remember, we may have offered some resources and suggestions for how to deal with that net cost. The first of those is the parent contribution. This is our suggested contribution toward the total cost of attendance for the full year. So again, you'll never see a bill for this precise amount. We use this number to calculate scholarship eligibility. We've calculated this amount based on all of the information that you provided on your CSS profile and FAFSA, as well as tax return information. So thank you for providing all of that information. We use these two income thresholds, $150,000 and $65,000, to help families understand what their expectations would be at Stanford before going through the process. For families with income less than $65,000, the expected parent contribution is zero. We're not asking them to contribute towards educational costs. This is the first year that we're using the higher threshold of $150,000 for scholarship that covers for tuition. For a family right at the $150,000 income level with typical assets for that income, the parent contribution is just under $19,000. And as a result, we will provide enough scholarship to cover tuition. For both of those thresholds, we make that promise only for those who have typical assets for that income level. We consider your reported cash, investments, the value of real estate other than your primary home, and business assets in the calculation of net worth. If you think about that parent contribution amount at those two income thresholds on a graph of income and expected parent contribution and draw a line between the two of them, you'll see how contributions for most families appear on this sliding scale. Those at higher income levels still do qualify for aid, typically at a lesser amount, depending on their situation. This is the first time I'm going to bring up COVID-19. So thank you for giving me 5 minutes or so to not think about it. Obviously, this situation could have a profound impact on some families' ability to contribute towards educational costs. And the information that you provided to us just a few short months ago may feel quite out of date right now. Please know that we are committed to working with you over the next 4 years to make Stanford a financial reality for you. We understand that some of you are feeling the impacts right now, an immediate economic impact. Because we're still in the middle of this situation, we don't know yet how employers are going to react. We don't know the full extent of relief programs that may be put in place, et cetera. We will ask you to estimate your 2020 calendar year income so that we can reassess your eligibility for aid. Most of us are not going to be able to do that with any accuracy for several more months. We have time to figure out these impacts and adjust aid eligibility. The first bill for fall term is not due until September 15th. We will continue to work with all aid applicants to do what we can. The university has made a commitment to meet the need of all eligible aid applicants. Accepting your offer of admission does not mean that we can no longer consider adjustments to your aid eligibility. So I know this is a hard message. I'm saying trust us, and you don't know us yet, but the financial aid program will be here to help you through this situation, especially if you're feeling direct impacts. Let's talk about the student responsibility. We also expect students to take on responsibility for a portion of the cost of attendance. In a typical year, the amount is $5,000, $1,500 from summer earnings, $3,500 from work during the academic year, plus 5% of assets reported in the student's name. As we were just discussing, this is not a typical year. The provost recently announced that in recognition that it may be difficult for students to find work this summer, we are waiving the summer earnings expectation for all students, including the incoming frosh, and replacing that expectation with scholarship. That means that if we've already sent an award letter with scholarship funds, that it needs to be updated. We've started making adjustments to financial aid packages as we make changes for appeals, et cetera, but it may be a month or two before all of the revisions are made. It's on the way. If your student contribution is $1,500 and you have scholarship in your financial aid package, you can expect a $1,500 increase to your scholarship from Stanford. If your student contribution is higher, there may be some contribution from student assets included in our expectation. We are also waiving those when the student's total net worth is less than $5,000. So if your expected student contribution is $1,525, we'll waive that $25 as well. Work during the academic year is still a question at this point. In a typical year, this is a campus where, as long as students are willing to be flexible in their first year, especially, they can find a job on campus regardless of their eligibility for financial aid. For this past spring quarter, when we moved classes online, we did replace any remaining work expectation in a student's financial aid package with scholarship. Many students have found ways to continue to work remotely in their on-campus jobs. However, we've waived that expectation as part of the financial aid package. Because the minimum wage for students is almost $16 per hour, students can typically earn that $3,500 expectation in 8 to 10 hours of work per week, which is not the burdensome level that might cause problems with your academic experience. 8 to 10 hours a week, especially if you're able to work on campus, is very manageable work. Another way that students might handle their student responsibility is outside awards or private scholarships from foundations, agencies, etc. Typically, those outside scholarships first replace the academic year earnings expectation, then the expected student contribution. This fall, of course, students have a head start because the student contribution will already be replaced for all of you. If those outside scholarships total more than the student responsibility amount, scholarship from Stanford will be reduced because we have a need-based financial aid program and you have another resource that is meeting your need. Another way to think of that is that those outside scholarships cannot be used to replace the expected parent contribution if Stanford scholarship is involved. It is notable that I have not mentioned student loans until now. Those eligible for federal student aid have eligibility for federal direct student loans. We've offered those loans if we weren't able to offer any need-based scholarship funds. We do not expect students to borrow to meet their need. As a result, 87% of the students who graduated during 2018-2019 had no student debt in their names. And those who did borrow had median indebtedness of $13,557, well below national averages, and that results in a very manageable level of debt for students. Stanford participates in the federal student loan programs for both students and parents of dependent students. We also have responsibility for certifying private student loans in the financial aid office. I'm not going to go into detail today about the loan programs. Please refer to our website for all of the information and application instructions. We typically begin processing those loan applications in August. So what happens in the next 3 years? You may have noticed that we've given you an award for 1 year, although a typical undergraduate takes 4 years to complete their degree. We do ask you to reapply for aid every year. The priority filing date for returning students is April 30th. You can think of this reapplication process as our annual check-in with you to see if there have been any changes in your family circumstances. If your situation has not changed significantly, you can expect a similar level of scholarship from year to year. I do want to point out that the number of siblings in college does have a significant impact on our calculation of the parent contribution. Essentially, we calculate one number for the family and divide it among the siblings in college. If you have 2 family members in college now and will only have 1 in a few years, that will mean a significant increase in the parent contribution. I'd like to say that you don't need to let us know if you win the lottery. We'll figure that out in the next application cycle. However, if things get worse, if employment changes, illness, other family changes that impact your financial resources, let us know throughout the year. We can make adjustments when appropriate, and we look forward to working with you in the financial aid office. Right now, I am going to turn this session over to Ashley Lippert, Stanford's Director of the Student Services Center, to talk about the billing and payment process. Here you go, Ashley.
Thank you, Karen. I'm happy to be here today. Billing, payments, and aid. If we use the autumn term as an example, we can demonstrate how billing, payments, and aid are applied towards a student account. Late July, tuition and fees are assessed. Students can see this in their student account online, and payments can be made at any time. In August, the first autumn bill will be sent outlining charges, payments, and any aid that is in the account's activity. Please note, anticipated aid will be detailed as anticipated aid, meaning the student can expect it to post at a future disbursement date. Mid-September is when the August bill will be due. The total due minus the anticipated aid is what should be paid. Families can pay at any time between when the charges are posted and this due date. If the payment has been made before the August bill is sent, the bill will just summarize the charges and payments in detail for your record keeping. Late September is when the anticipated aid is dispersed and posted onto your student account. We strongly encourage students to enroll in direct deposit to ensure they receive any excess aid refunds quickly and securely. Why a monthly bill? Monthly bills are sent as reminders of changes to the student bill. Month to month, students may incur additional charges or make purchases like in-room HDTV cable charges, course fees, or Stanford Card Plan retail purchases on campus. In the next slide, I will talk into greater detail about the Stanford Card Plan. What is the card plan? The Stanford Card Plan acts as a line of credit with a $1,000 limit. Students can use it for purchases at most online campus locations like our bookstore, food shops, or for printing and copying. The amount used for a given month will be reflected onto their subsequent monthly bills. The average student uses around $400 per quarter. Stanford Health Insurance. We wanted to remind all of you that all students who are admitted are automatically enrolled into Stanford's health insurance program, which is offered annually beginning September 1st of each year and costs $5,928. Families who wish to have this insurance fee waived because they have their own insurance plans can do so no later than September 15th. Please note that this is not the same as the campus health service fee that is charged every quarter. For more information on health insurance, please visit the Vaden Health Center website at vaden.stanford.edu. There are a number of payment options available for students and families to use. Students and their authorized payers can view and pay their bills via Stanford ePay. Email notifications can also be set up in the ePay portal. We also offer electronic check, Flywire, and Western Union. Although paper checks and wire transfers take the longest amount of time, those are also available as options to you. I wanted to let you know that there is an installment payment plan available. This does not give extra time to pay. Notice, the third installment still meets the university's bill due date. It helps families budget and pay over time rather than in one lump sum each term. You can see the highlights here. You would need to start making payments in July to make 9 regular monthly payments during the academic year. Students sign up for the pay plan via Access, which allows us to send courtesy reminder emails to you. Mind Over Money is Stanford's financial wellness program that aims to equip students with the knowledge and skills to make informed financial decisions, to democratize access to information and resources for all students, and to cultivate a culture of healthy financial behaviors and conversations. Mind Over Money offers interactive workshops throughout the year that explore concepts and cultivate skills to help students build healthier financial habits. Mind Over Money staff teach a 1-unit academic course called Wellness 183, Financial Wellness for a Healthy Long Life. Also, all students can meet one-on-one with a Mind Over Money financial coach for free. These coaches are mostly Stanford alumni who are excited to support students in attaining their financial goals, whether that is to figure out a feasible plan to get out of credit card debt or to figure out how to best plan for long-term investing as soon as they graduate. Mind Over Money's website, mindovermoney.stanford.edu, is the portal to all of the program's resources, including personal finance, learning modules, videos, and financial planning templates, as well as access to the coaching program and listing of upcoming events. Here are the items I want you to take away from this session. Number 1, we mentioned earlier that authorized payers can access student financial information. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA for short, makes our students responsible for their accounts. Students can add authorized users to access their financial records if they choose to do so. Students will learn how to set this up over the summer. Number 2, remember to waive your Stanford health insurance if your student already has adequate coverage. Number 3, students should enroll in direct deposit to ensure any expected financial aid refunds are issued quickly and securely. They will also learn how to do this over the summer. And finally, number 4, work closely with financial aid if your family's financial situation changes. Here is a list of important websites that we've referenced throughout. This presentation will be available to you through the Admit Weekend site, as well as the financial aid website. Now we're going to transition to answering your questions. Thank you and welcome.
Hello again, everyone. So I've got a list of financial aid questions that are appearing before me. Can outside awards replace the parent contribution? No, is the simple way to put that. So only this is only an issue in situations where we have offered need-based Stanford scholarship. If we've not offered any financial aid from our financial aid program, then of course you can earn as many outside scholarships as you wish. When outside scholarships are more than the amount of that student responsibility that's in a need-based financial aid package, we view that as additional resources that the student has to meet their need. So we are going to redeploy our funds to other students who still have need, is the way that that works. We will often work with students to help them distribute that money over the 4 years that they are here. A lot of students have earned outside scholarships that are one-time non-renewable scholarships. It is possible for them to go back to the agencies that granted that money and say, could I use this my sophomore year instead, or my junior year, or my senior year? So they get the maximum benefit from those scholarships over their 4 years. We will also look at that excess scholarship money in excess of the student responsibility as a resource for students who need to buy a computer, for example. So we'll work with students to maximize the use of those outside scholarships, but we do treat that as a resource that is helping to meet need. I hope that's clear. Does Stanford offer any merit aid if I was offered merit aid from somewhere else? That's a great question. And again, I'm sorry, but the answer is no to that one. All of our undergraduate financial aid is need-based, and it does make it very hard for us to compete with some of those merit financial aid programs out there at very good institutions. And I am sorry that that puts you in a very difficult decision for making choices about where you're going to attend. But our financial aid program is need-based. Ashley, you want to jump in there with one?
Sure. There's one question about what banks are on campus. So we have a Stanford Credit Union, and we also have Wells Fargo here on campus at Stanford.
Thank you. I've got a question here. Do I need to get a loan? Do I need to complete the FAFSA? For private student loans, you don't have to. I highly recommend that everybody complete the FAFSA. As the name implies, it's free, the free application for federal student aid. And because it's a federal application form, it links with IRS data and allows you to import that data. So if you're able to do that, it makes filling it out relatively simple. And the FAFSA does open up those federal loan programs, which are the loan programs that I would recommend over the private loans. But do take a look at our website, and we've got some information there to help you compare and contrast those private loans with the federal student loans. How about how do I find a job on campus? That's a fun one. I know that you heard the president and provost talk earlier this morning. We still have lots of unknown questions about what fall term is going to look like for students. But in a normal year, this is a campus, as I've said, where it is relatively easy for students to find jobs. Our Career Development Service, BEAM, as they like to call themselves, provides a tool on their website called Handshake, where employers on campus post jobs and students are able to apply for those jobs. So that's one very common way of students finding jobs. And also just, talking to their peers on campus. We still see on campus the tear off sheets stuck to doors and departments that give students the opportunities to find work. So most of us who have offices on campus really enjoy working with students and like making that kind of opportunity available to students. So, unlike some campuses where it might be hard to find a job if you are not a financial aid recipient, we don't have many jobs that are restricted to financial aid recipients only. I alluded to the fact that students who are from low-income backgrounds may be eligible for the Federal Work-Study Program. And what that program does is allow departments on campus to hire students without any cost out of their own budget. The federal government actually pays your salary. So that makes it a little bit easier for students to find those kinds of hourly jobs. And all of our jobs are paid directly to the student on a regular payroll schedule. It's not like those funds go directly to the bill first. They can use those funds to make payments against the bill, but more often students are using it to cover their personal expenses, the purchase of their books, those kinds of expenses. Do you want to take another one, Ashley?
Most of them are looking like they're
yeah. I see another one that I need to jump in there. Yeah, sorry. I thought there were more on the Ashley side. Sorry. Health insurance. So let's talk a little bit about health insurance. Is there any assistance for the cost of the Cardinal Care insurance, and why is it not reflected on the award letter to begin with? So you're right, good eyes. Unless you are one of our international students who are eligible for aid, we have not included the cost of Cardinal Care insurance automatically on a financial aid award. For families where the parent contribution is zero or is very low, we will absolutely cover the cost of that insurance on campus for students if they need that insurance. Most students end up waiving the Cardinal Care expense because they have adequate insurance elsewhere. So that is why we don't automatically include it up front, especially students whose parents have higher parent contribution expectations. We've actually considered your expenses for health insurance for your family when we calculated that expected parent contribution. That was part of our assessment. So when there is a higher parent contribution, we do expect parents to take that responsibility.
I can go over, there's a question about can you review the items on the bill? So I can give you some idea of what you would see on your Stanford bill. Obviously, you would see your tuition charges. You would see your housing and dining charges, your associated student fees. So typically, that would be your campus health service fee, your graduate student activities fee. Once again, some of these things we're not totally sure what fall's going to look like yet. So when we get clarity on that, but also your health insurance will be on there, any related housing fees like communications fee, or if you've lost your room key and you needed it rekeyed, or a lost ID card would show up on your bill, as well as your Stanford card plan charges. So any charges that you make on your card plan will show up monthly.
Let me address the process for appealing financial aid awards. I did talk about that quite a bit, that this is going to be a year when we're already anticipating that we're going to be going back and looking at those financial aid awards quite a bit. So on our website, financialaid.stanford.edu, we have a forms section, and in that section, you will find a request for revision form. And what that form does, you don't have to use that form to request a revision, but it does help us keep track of who is asking for a revision and speed that process along. And it gives you a way to outline your 2020 calendar year income for us. So take a look at that request for revision. You can submit those requests anytime throughout the year. Often we are working with families in the November, December timeframe to look at updates for the calendar year as we approach the end of the calendar year. We can make adjustments retroactively for the fall term, or we can decide that it's most appropriate to make adjustments looking forward to winter and spring. I think you've caught, as a quarter-based school, our billing is actually divided into thirds, where the major bills for tuition are going out 3 times per year, not just twice. So it's already spread out for students a little bit. And that helps us in this revision process as well. So we can continue to look at those revisions as your financial circumstances are changing. Is there a limit on parent income to apply for financial aid? It's a great question as well. No, there's not a limit. Please know that we are going to look at the full financial situation. For those of you who have completed a profile, you know how much detail that we are collecting and what we know about your financial situation. It's a lot of information that you provide to us. We're looking at that full information, the family circumstances, to make that determination of eligibility for aid. We don't say that there's an upper limit, because what if that family that's making an otherwise very healthy income has got 4 kids in college this year, or a family member is sick, their income was a certain level, right now that's not happening. So we will continue to look at every application. I encourage people to go ahead and apply. We may look at your application and say, yeah, that income is too high. It's not somebody we would typically support. I don't see anything unusual going on here. So we will offer the federal student loans that you're eligible for as a way to finance those educational costs. Ashley, do you want to take this question about 529 plans?
Sure. We do have a lot of families that pay with 529 plans. Typically, the best way to get those funds to Stanford is through a paper check. That's usually how we're receiving those funds. And we have information on our website as to where that check can be sent.
I see that there are continue to be questions about health insurance. And Ashley and I, unfortunately, are not the experts on whether you should use Stanford's Cardinal Care health insurance plan or not. I do recommend that you go out to Vaden's website. Vaden is the name of our health insurance center, vaden.stanford.edu. And they have a lot of very good information. They will also be sending out a booklet to families as we go through the summer that lays out all of the things should be thinking about when you're thinking about whether or not the coverage you have now is adequate here at Stanford. So do look at the Vaden site for that information. Are there any other sources of scholarship on campus, research opportunities? Let's talk about that a little bit. So all of the undergraduate financial aid that is for the cost of attendance, so anything to be applied to tuition, room and board, the standard expenses that students face is managed through the financial aid office. So our need-based financial aid program handles all of that kind of aid. The departments don't have any funds for undergraduates like that. What they do have, however, are research opportunities. So regardless of need, students can apply for research funds to use for research projects, summer projects. There's all kinds of really interesting things that go on in a typical summer. If you look at VPUE's website, the Vice Provost for Undergraduate Education, you'll find a lot of good information there. Ashley, do you see that last one about the installment payment plan?
Yes, I do. So for autumn, you can sign up for the installment payment plan by July 15th. For winter, it's October 15th, and spring, January 15th.
There's kind of a what if question here that I'll engage with for a minute. And that is, if the fall quarter is distance only, what will my bill look like? What will my financial aid look like? What I can do is tell you what we did for students during spring term through the financial aid program. I really do not know what fall quarter is going to look like, what our options might look like, but I think it will help you understand just where our priorities lie and how important supporting our students are to us. So when the decision was made that students needed to move off campus, we did adjust financial aid packages for the spring term. So it was over our spring break that all of this was going on. And so it was the start of a new term that we delayed by a week to give people time to adjust to the new environment. Financial aid packages were reevaluated to recognize that students were no longer being charged for room and board. So both the housing and the meal plan and all of the associated charges were removed from the students' spring quarter accounts. For students who were receiving financial aid, we adjusted the cost of attendance to reflect an expense for food, meals, right? So even for families that have an expected parent contribution, that contribution was not calculated with an expectation that you were feeding this child full time for a whole quarter. So we left a $2,000 allowance in a student's cost of attendance if they were going to be living at home to reflect those increased costs for food at home. We also, for students who were unable to go home, you heard a story earlier this morning, which is pretty typical of some of our students, home, there's not enough space for them there. Younger siblings are trying to go to high school online at home. So all those kinds of issues came into play. We were able to keep some of our students on campus, but very few. And another portion, especially of our financial aid recipients, ended up renting spaces off campus. So we allowed them to keep their scholarship funds that they would have received to pay for their housing on campus to pay for housing off campus. So Stanford made a lot of financial aid funds, over $4.5 million actually, available to continuing students to help them with their spring quarter expenses. And we continue to make those adjustments on a daily basis. So we've been very busy in the financial aid office. Thank you for your patience with us. And I do want to mention that although we are all working remotely, staff have been making themselves available for Zoom and phone appointments for staff. For newly admitted students, you can get a half-hour appointment with one of our staff by using the admit.stanford.edu website and the calendaring information that we have there. A couple of quick things I want to address. We're winding down in time, but is it too late to apply for financial aid? No, but it is too late for us to let you know by May 1st. If you're going to sit down and fill out those applications today, we will probably get them in our systems and in our office on Thursday or Friday. And that is not enough time to turn around and offer a financial aid to you. But please be assured that we don't view the fact that you've accepted admission as the fact that you have accepted that you're not going to get any aid. So we'll continue to look at those applications. Will financial aid change a lot my sophomore year? No, as I said, if your financial situation has not changed, then you should not expect a change to your financial aid package. That is the beauty of a need-based financial aid program. You don't have to maintain grades to continue to be eligible for financial aid or take certain courses, et cetera. You just need to be in good academic standing, right? I don't want you to get in trouble with Lewis Newman and his folks, but you'll continue to be eligible for aid. You can use the net price calculator that's on our website if you do have some changes in your family's financial circumstances, if you're going to have one less child in college, if income has gone up or income has gone down and you want to get an estimate of what it might look like. That net price calculator is a good way to get a good ballpark estimate. And one more thing that I want to throw in here really quickly, and then we'll wrap up, is does financial aid cover the cost of overseas programs? Absolutely. So Stanford's overseas program has some wonderful opportunities for students. They continue to pay their Stanford tuition and they continue to receive their aid from Stanford. So I encourage students to look at those opportunities. So thank you so much. This has really been a great opportunity to talk with all of you. I hope that you found this information helpful, and I hope that you figured out how to find us and talk to us in the financial aid office. And I will let Ashley have the final word.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. Please stay tuned for our next session on safety and well-being at 2 p.m. This will be facilitated by Susie Brubaker Cole, our Vice Provost for Student Affairs. Thank you all.
Thank you.